Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of the Grips to Poker Training Show, where we teach you how to get stacking. Today, my guest on the show is going to be Elliot Champ, who's playing 4 tables of 50 NL at America's Cardroom. One piece of good news for you guys, anyone who had money on Full Tilt, the relaunch is scheduled for November the 7th. And so all of us non-US players are going to be getting our money back, I think to the tune of 184 million. And the US players, I think, may have to wait another month or 6 months or something, but eventually you guys are going to get your money back too, so nothing to worry about. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and switch the feed over to Elliot now and start the session. All right, Elliot, how you doing, bro?
Pretty good, pretty good. The cards on the side are so small, so I just tried to change the card size, but this is the best I could do.
It's all right. I like that you switched to the 4-color deck so we can actually just go by color. It's a lot easier to see flushes. Have you ever had the mistake where you have like 5 red cards, but they're not actually a flush?
I don't think I've been that drunk before.
I've definitely had that happen when I'm playing like too many tables and tables are all really fucking small. And for some reason I don't have my 4-color deck on. But...
Sure.
Ooh.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good start to the feed, man. 2 pair. And fucking
aces.
Toppest pair.
Alright, so let's see. I think like $6?
Yeah. It looks about right. I think we could go even smaller, even like $4, because we don't have to be worried about the spades coming in. It's only a jack or a 10 or the bottom card pairing that we're worried about. If we didn't have spades, though, that 3/4 pot to 80% pot is definitely going to be the way to go.
I wonder what he's drawing to. Right. 6, 7?
Anywhere between 6 and 7 is fine. So why don't you go ahead and tell everyone about your experience with poker so far, how long you've been playing for, what learning methods you've used. And...
Yeah, I started playing poker maybe like, I think like maybe 8 years ago. This is right before like the whole moneymaker thing. And I mostly played, because there's a lot of, I live in LA, there's a lot of online card rooms here. I mean real live card rooms. So I used to go to the casino and play a lot of limit poker.
Okay.
And that has made me have some like bad habits, I think, because I try to like, get people off right on the flop, get me on the flop. But I did play a lot of limit poker for a while, and then I took a break from that. I just stopped playing for a couple of years, and then I moved to China, and then I just moved back a couple of months ago. And so I started getting back into the game, and I recently started paying for like coaching, and I mean I've always read a lot of books and stuff like that, but just right now I started to get really serious about the game instead of just being like a recreational player.
Okay. And which books have you found were the most helpful?
I think just seeing how other people think about poker. So obviously like the Sklansky ones are really good at basic. Like a basic course in just like the theory of poker.
Yeah.
But I also like the stuff where it just gets into kind of like the lifestyle of a poker player. So maybe like I recently read like the Barry Greenstein book.
Okay, that's Ace on the River.
Yeah, I like that one. I mean, it wasn't quite as technical, but just just reading about like his different just different thoughts about different players and that and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've actually never read that one. I've looked over the table of contents and seen that it's quite different from the other type of material available out there.
Uh-huh.
And I'd imagine it's good for looking at like the bigger picture of what really being a professional poker player would entail, rather than just learning about winning strategies and stuff. And I think that's very important to know how to balance your life as a poker player and how to actually act like a professional and to really separate yourself from just the recreational players and the just gamblers that are out there.
Yeah, and speaking of which, of Barry Greenstein, I don't know if you know who Mimi Tran is. Like she's also like a professional player.
Okay.
Yeah, she was his ex-girlfriend, I think. She was in like the WPT and she won some like women's event or something like that. But I actually played with her the other night at the Commerce Casino here in Los Angeles. So that was kind of interesting just to see like she was grinding it out in the live games too.
Yeah. Were you like in awe at all? Is it like playing with a celebrity, or is she not really a big enough
I didn't even
deal?
recognize her. Other people at the table did.
Like, yo, she's famous, and you're like, can't be that fucking famous. I've never heard of her.
She played very well though, but she did get me in like one or two hands. So
Mhm. And what games are you playing out there on the West Coast?
I play like a 300 to $500 buy-in. Like because I think the $500 games are a little bit tougher. The people are players are a bit tougher, whereas like the 3 to 500 is kind of like just more casual and more gambly.
Right, right. And on that $300 table, people can still run it up and then still be playing like 100 big blinds deep and stuff, right?
Yeah. Guys will be like 3,000, $4,000 deep, like when the blind's only $5, So there's a lot of money on the table.
Yeah. I think that 4-8 suited would have been a good spot to lead out. Um,
Oh shit.
this is fun.
Yeah.
You can still check call or check raise. It's not the end of the world. But in a spot where it's a limped pot and you can't necessarily count on someone to put in a continuation bet, it's generally good to start building the pot yourself.
Yeah, I think I just blanked out when I was talking to you there.
It's a pretty good turn, bro.
Okay, let's lead out.
Yeah, and you don't have to bet too big here. You
Five
can,
or
yeah, five's good. Even like 475, just because like you pretty much have a lock on the hand at this point,
yeah.
and you don't want to scare off a king.
Oh, that's like a good card.
It's bad if he's got a king. He's going to be scared. I bet pretty small.
Mm. I find it hard to talk and play poker at the same time.
Yeah, I'll be nice. I won't ask you too much. Oh man, I really hope you're not up against king eight. I think your pot odds dictate you got a call here. Um,
That's or a flush. Ah,
you win, bro.
I do.
Yeah, man, you got a better boat than
Oh
he does.
yeah. What am I doing, man?
That I was thinking. I'm like, man, I hope he doesn't have king eight. And I was thinking 8-4 with chopping. Four pocket fours is the hand we need him to have. Um, like a flush is going to be possible, but for him to call a check raise on the flop with a hand that has diamonds is just a backdoor draw. It's pretty unlikely. Like I think we can kind of rule out that he's going to have a backdoor flush there very often. But nice
Yeah,
turn. Nice turn. You were drawing pretty thin on the
I know. I
flop there.
sucked out on him there. Two outer.
And that's a topic that I actually wanted to touch on is that in limped pots, you have to be very careful about stacking off. Like a lot of people will really overvalue just like top pair in a limped pot. In a situation like that where ranges are going to be so wide, you want to be really cautious about putting your money in with even bottom two pair sometimes because People can have any two. There's no reason that they can't have a stronger two pair than you or a better made hand. And with so little money in pre-flop, it's not like the pot's giving you that much in the way of odds to justify making a bad play post-flop. So you want to be really cautious about committing 100 big blinds in a limp pot when you don't have the nuts. Although I'd consider top two to be the nuts. Like, doesn't have to be top set.
Have you ever folded like a full house? I'm just curious. Like sometimes it
At
seems like
some
it's
point,
obvious that he has a full house too. It's just and your full house might be a little bit weak. Like, have you ever?
yeah, a situation that most people are incapable of getting away from, but can actually be a pretty easy fold, is like if you flop bottom set in a pot that's pretty multi-way pre-flop, and then you put some heavy action in on the flop that's really going to narrow everyone else's range to a set or two pair. This would be a spot where the board's disconnected in such a way that a straight or a front flush is not possible. And then if the board pairs and you had bottom set, so you've improved to a full house, but you've done betting in such a way that you narrowed people's ranges to two pair or a higher set, then when that board pairs up, you're going to be drawing dead. And like, let's say you check raise the flop and they call, and you bet turn and they call, and you bet the river and they then raise in a spot where they're never going to be bluffing and you have the worst possible boat. And that's going to be a spot where, wow, how sick is that hand? You would have flopped a set. Other dude river to set. And the guy with aces loses. Yeah, that's one situation where folding a full house is definitely going to be possible because you're value betting the whole way where you can get called by a worse hand. But for someone to raise you, the only value hands they can have are also full houses. And if you have the worst boat possible, then folding is going to be correct. The reason we didn't fold with the 8-4 is because we had the second worst boat, so we could still beat the worst boat. But like if we have fours there and the river is, jack of hearts where there's no flush possible, we bet out and he still puts us in, we're going to be cautious with bottom full there. Unless the player is someone who like can't fold trips, which like in a live game, you don't usually want to fold a full house unless you're like thousands and thousands of big blinds deep.
Sure. I just folded the jack seven there. Just didn't know what the guy behind had. And I had a bad kicker.
Yeah,
Didn't want to get involved in that.
that's fine. It's if you don't know what cards you're trying to catch on the turn or river and you can't play your hand confidently facing any action, then folding to a flop, that's perfectly fine to just minimize your losses or minimize your investment and get out early without putting yourself in a tricky spot. That queen nine suited on table 2 you could have raised. It's not a hand that you have to raise though. Man, your friends are just like mine. They don't respect when you're on the broadcast. They're still
You can hear
calling
it.
you. I left my phone in the other room today. Hopefully no one shows up. They'll be like, dude, we showed up. Why didn't you answer your phone to let us in? I'm working.
I'm amazed that you can like multi-table and talk at the same time. Like my brain is just like.
Well, it's like anything else. It just comes with practice.
Sure.
And I'll be honest, there have been a couple of videos I've done. Like I think the Zoom videos where I was missing so many spots because I was trying to like work with my train of thought and then I couldn't like switch my brain into like poker mode for any tough decisions. But like, for example, if I'm just like multi-tabling full ring where decisions are usually going to be pretty straightforward and pretty similar every time and there aren't too many difficult spots, it's pretty easy to just maintain a train of thought. Because anything that becomes more automatic in your brain is obviously going to require less thought. So the fact that I've played, millions of hands means that most situations, it takes like a tenth of a second worth of thinking to make that decision, which is why I can still focus on like verbalizing my thoughts. We got a lot of action in the chat today. Special guest in the chat room. Hey, Greg Merson. Good job in Europe. So, which other online rooms have you played on, be it before or after Black Friday?
I used to play on Party Poker before, and now it's just the U.S. sites, unfortunately. So, um, Lock Poker and Carbon Poker. Like Lock Poker, I usually play there because the rake back deal, all the bonuses are nice, but
Right.
their software just is terrible.
Yeah. And for anyone who's interested in getting that rake back deal, send me an email and I can get you guys set up with 36% rake back on Lock Poker and other Cake Poker skins. They're on the Cake network, right? And they've switched over to Cake from
Yeah,
Merge.
yeah,
And Carbon is still on the Merge network.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
I usually call just about anything in like the small blind in this situation here in table one.
Okay. That's a situation where I'd like the hand to have a bit more like floppability, like King 5 suited, sure.
Hmm.
King 10 off, sure. 5 6. Like either a small connector, or if it's a Broadway hand, that's fine. Or if it's high cards, you could do a gapper or a decent suited hand. Like I don't know if I'd call with a hand like 8-2 suited or something. Because just thinking about how few boards you actually connect strongly with that you can play confidently and aggressively is the first thing to think about. There aren't too many boards you're going to hit, and even on those boards where you do hit hard, it's going to be pretty unlikely your opponent hits hard as well. So even though you know you're getting really good pot odds, and you're going to be getting that multi-way action, it's still kind of setting yourself up for a bad reverse implied odds situation to call with the trashy hands.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. I think it's like 25 cents or whatever. It's half a blind, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a fish that limped in, and then I think the guy behind me was pretty weak in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, like if you're playing in like a live game though, where say people are limping and you know that even if someone limps, it's a limp pot, and if they flop top pair, they won't be able to fold it, and they'll put in over 100 big blinds. That's a situation where it becomes more worth it to see the flop with any two cards. In these games where people aren't going to stack off as wide, it's kind of just better to stay out of trouble. If you look ahead at all the potential scenarios that can come from you completing with a junky hand, it's easy to see why just getting out of there and waiting for the next hand is going to be better than seeing a cheap flop. Because it's not the 25 cents you put in, it's is this 25 cents going to lead to a profitable investment later in the hand? Am I going to get easy decisions, or am I going to be put in a lot of awkward spots? Stuff like that. Can you pull up the hand history for that king queen?
I don't know how. Oh, here we go.
I just want to see how many bets went in there. Okay. Wow. This is the
Weird.
worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's weird, man.
Okay, so you just checked it down and then called the river, if I'm reading correct?
I bet the flop. I checked the turn, and he bet really like $2 into an $8 pot. So I just called him just for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's an interesting spot. I think I would probably be inclined to fold there because I think if he was bluffing, like if let's say he floated with a gut shot or something, and he was going to bluff it, he'd probably bet bigger. The bet looks pretty like a please call me bet,
Yeah.
and I'd also imagine that he doesn't bet that size with a king. So even though again it's like well it's only $2, I'm getting 4-1, might as well call. If it's a spot where he's not going to be betting with a worse hand 20% of the time, we should probably fold. And given that he had a hand that could check call the flop right away, we're ruling out any sort of total air hand. He's actually probably going to check raise if he has a gutter. So yeah, there was an ace or a queen or king, whatever the mid pair was. And I don't think he's going to value bet or turn the mid pair into a bluff with that sizing. But I know coming from a big win at the 5-5 games, it can be hard to take like $2 calls and 25-cent limps seriously.
It's just a totally different dynamic, you know. The live games are just always like multi-pot.
Mm-hmm.
So should I bet out or just check raise? I'd bet out.
I think leading out here is cool. I'd lead rather big though, like 225 or so. It's a board where he's not going to be c-betting all that often, so leading out is a good play because you don't really want it to go check there. But he's also going to be calling with a lot of hands that we're beating and we can get a lot of value from. And something about live play versus online play, because the consensus is in live poker is much easier than online poker in terms of competition, because you get a lot more recreational players who are going to play, you know, just for fun. Whereas online, you have a lot more like grinders and people who are serious about the game, because it's much harder to get money online than it is to just show up at a casino and just sit down and play. So if you're someone who can handle, you know, one tabling, sitting there for quite a while and being patient, nice flop. Live poker is definitely where it's at, but online is great for building the bankroll so that you have some money to take to your first live session, and also to learn those good habits. Online's a place where you can get in tons of repetition, tons of practice, and become a really strong player with great fundamentals, which if you then take that skill set to a live casino, you're going to fucking crush. Which is why a lot of people who used to be big online grinders have transitioned to live, and they don't play a lot of online anymore. The games are at the limits they want to play are a lot tougher. Whereas you can play for big money in a live setting where, you know, still like half the table are fish.
I noticed that like my play is different online versus live. And like online, I'm much more liable to think other people are bluffing, whereas in live, I'm much more of a, you know, just really tight player. And it seems like it's much easier to get a feel of people live than online. So I'll make a lot of calls that I shouldn't make online, and it's something I'm working on right now. I mean, obviously there's like stats, you know, if I had a HUD for the site and stuff like that, but it's just it's I think people play a little bit more. I don't know. It just seems like my ability to get a read on people online is a little bit tougher than live for me. You know.
Right, because when you're at the live setting, you can look the guy up and down, get a good read for his comfort level, see if he's nervous, see how comfortable he is, and that stuff. Whereas, I mean, online, the HUD really makes all the difference, because when you know what percentage of hands someone plays, whether they're aggressive or passive, you know, how much they like to steal, how often they see that stuff, you can really categorize a player, and a lot of their post-flop tendencies are going to resonate with the pre-flop picture that's been painted for you. You going to make some moves here on table one?
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
That's a good board to be fucking with them on. It's pretty hard for people to connect with paired boards.
Time to give up.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Would you?
I'm thinking he probably check called with an ace on the turn.
Yeah.
And if you shove there, you know, you could probably get him to fold, but it's a pretty high risk play. It's pretty tough, but yeah.
It's just weird that he dunked out on the river, though. Was it like a protection bet? Or?
Yeah, it was a block bet of sorts. Or he could have been one of those guys who, like maybe he had a flush or trips, and he didn't want to lose you on the turn by betting again. But once he knew you were in there, then he became really afraid that you were going to check back. So he's putting a block bet out there, even though like it really doesn't make sense, because doing that means you'll only call with the hands in your value range that you were probably going to bet anyway, and he eliminates your opportunity of bluffing at the pot, which means he's taking a big chunk of your range that he could extract value from and just, making you fold it. So I don't think it's a great play, but I definitely see it happen a lot at the lower limits where people are like, well, I got a made hand. I don't want the river to go check, check. It's like, who fucking cares if the river goes check, check? If checking extracts more value from his range than betting does, then that's just what you got to do. And if it doesn't work out, no big deal. Like people hate to have a strong hand go to showdown without a bet going in on the river, and it just doesn't make any sense to me, really. Have you read any of the books on tells? Like, have you read Navarro's book or Mike Caro's book?
I've never heard of Navarro, but I have read Mike Caro's book, and I've been trying to really like focus in on like getting tells in a live game, but I can't seem to pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing with the people looking at the flop and then their eyes kind of darting back to their chips if they hit a hand, stuff like that. But I'm not really able to get maybe sometimes, but very rarely I'm actually able to get a read just from tells.
Mm-hmm. That's something that also just comes with experience. The more time you spend playing live and the more you just practice looking at your opponents, the more you're going to be able to pick up on stuff. And one piece of advice I would give regarding tells, because I know when I first read Navarro's books and Caro's books, I was like, all right, I'm a fucking tell master. I'm going to read everyone like fucking book and make all these sweet calls. And like, don't ever abandon your fundamentals and your like general game plan and overall strategy because you think you have a read on someone. At the end of the day, for the most part, math and like overall game strategy should dictate your decisions, and tell should just act as a tiebreaker. It's only when you have a really specific read that is extremely reliable, and every time the guy scratches his nose, he doesn't have it, that you can act on that. But you have to see that tell prove to be correct like 5 or 10 times before you can really start to put a lot of weight into it. But I found the most useful and reliable tell is actually the way people stack their chips, which was in the first like 3 or 4 sections of that Caro's book. Like if people have their chips stacked really tall, they're generally going to be looser players because they want easy access to their chips because they want to throw them in the pot very often. And when guys have them stacked in like stacks of 5 or 10 instead of stacks of 20, those guys are going to be really, really nitty. And an interesting one was the stacks of 20 is obviously standard, but I've noticed that when people stack them in a triangle, they tend to have a bit more game and more creativity than people who stack them in a rectangle. And
that's true. Yeah, I remember seeing that yesterday. That was funny.
Yeah, it says a lot about how someone plays, just the way they stack their chips. It's kind of crazy, and it's funny looking back at the World Series. I was looking at the pictures from the main event when I went deep the first year, and I had my shit stacked in a rectangle because I was just a total nit. And this year I was experimenting with the triangle and some other formations, and I've got a bit more game now than I did back then. So it's interesting to see. Yeah, defo check raise that and stack this guy. We call the 3-bet?
Yeah. I wanted to go set money.
Okay. Well, looks like you got your implied odds.
Sweet.
Got him. Wow, the chat is fucking blowing up today.
Is it because Greg Merson's on?
It's because Greg Merson's on. Yeah, I've never seen so much action.
One tell that I do like is the one with the hand trembles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I tend to see is pretty reliable.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Some people might fake it, obviously. But usually, with recreational players or weak players, it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I remember one really funny time I was playing at the BC Poker Championship, and some guy, you know, he's put his chips in the pot and he started shaking. And I was like, wow, you got a pretty big hand there, eh, dude? And he's like, no, actually, I have epilepsy.
Was he fucking with you or is he
No, the guy
serious?
legit had epilepsy, and I felt so bad afterwards. But these things happen. And another thing about tells, because that's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about is tells, because I love live poker. The fact that you're playing in a 5-5 game, which is, I assume, you know, like mid to upper limit game in your casino, it's going to be harder to pick up tells. The less experienced someone is, the more tells they're going to give off. So in like a 1-2 game, or if you play like, say, the beginner game at the MGM Grand, which is 50 cents a dollar, people are just riddled with tells because it's their first time playing, or they're pretty new to the game and they don't realize that they have to conceal these things and think about them. But as you get to the higher limits and people are more aware of the idea of tells and that stuff, snap call, um, people give less away because they're more aware of it and more concerned. You just put that guy on tilt.
Jeez. Oh, somehow. Jesus.
Sorry, man. I don't mean to laugh at your pain, but it was only $5.
That's fine.
I think with this Ace King, I think for a half stack, I might have got it in, but I could see both ways.
Should I just shove on him or just?
No, call. Because at this point, you've locked up the showdown value. There's no real bad turn cards for you. Um, and you want to let him keep bluffing if that's what he's doing. And if he has a value hand, he's going to bet it on the turn anyway. So it's that concept of if we raise, we're knocking out some of his range was by calling. We keep everything in there. And like if he has a queen, we got unlucky, but given it's a 3-bet pot, he probably wasn't folding the queen anyway if we raised the flop. So it made no difference. You're going to see AA.
Ah.
Yep. So we just got cooler there. Not much we could do. If it were 100 big blinds, maybe could have got away, but for 50 bigs in a 3-bet pot, once you pair up with Ace King, you're just never folding. But the idea of keeping his bluffs in there along with his value hands is a good way to maximize value against the overall range, rather than just isolating the part of the range that has us beat.
I'm just afraid of people sucking out, and I think that's part of like my limit poker experiences.
Right.
So that usually I just try to jam the flop and try to get everybody out.
Right. You want to protect your hand.
Yeah.
Protect your equity. And a limit that makes sense because you can only bet a fixed amount, so there's a cap on the amount of value you can get from a hand. Whereas in these big bet games where the payoff gets bigger on later streets, you want to keep as many worse hands in there as possible. Whoops. I was just seeing there was a 50-100 game going earlier on Stars, but it looks like it broke.
How much harder would you say those games are, like, as you move up the levels? Like, is there a big difference between, like, 200 no limit and, like, whatever, 800 or 1,000?
In my experience, 4-cent and 10-cent no limit are just silly. The penny games, it's just kind of crazy. I don't even think that that's like real poker.
Yeah.
The real micros. Once you get to like 20-cent no limit, like 10-cent, 20-cent to 15-cent, 30-cent, they play pretty similar. A lot of casual players, a lot of people who, they don't really care about the 20 or 30 bucks. They'll just fire it in there. So those games are filled with action and an easy place to make money by knitting it up. And then I would say 25, 50 cents and 50 cent a dollar play pretty similar. Like most games, there are two limits that are going to be about the same. And it's the types of players that populate the games that really determine what it's like. So 25, 50 cent, 50 cent a dollar, you're going to see a lot of just nits making money. Whereas once you go to 1, 2, and 2, 4, it's a lot more of the tight aggressive players that are making the money, and the nits are kind of getting run over. A few nits still do well, but for the most part, it's tags that you're going to have to deal with there. And then once you make the jump to 3, 6, and 5, 10, it's a lot more loose aggressive players where there's a lot more pressure pre-flop, and there's a lot more pressure in all spots really. So in the lowest stakes games, you just got to play tight and you'll win. Or the micros, you can do that. And once you get to the low stakes, it's about who can value bet better. And then once you get to the mid stakes, it's about who can apply the pressure on the guys who are just focusing on value betting. And then once you get to the high stakes, it's about who can read hands better, understand game flow, and adjust to people who are either on tilt or playing a different style for the day. Yeah.
Would you say it's considerably harder, like, like by like order of magnitude, or is it just small skills?
No, I would say it's definitely like an order of magnitude because it's not so much that you have like you pick up one more skill per limit to be able to compete, but the skills that you have to acquire for the higher games are so much more difficult to learn. Like you can't just read a book and then go sit in a 3-6 or a 5-10 game online because everyone in there already knows everything. Whereas to play in the micro stakes, you read one book and you're good to go. I mean, fuck. If you want to be 5 cent, 10 cent, you could probably just get a hand chart and know how often to c-bet, and you'll do fine. Because if you think about the players you're dealing with, they already know all the stuff you know plus more, and they also have a ton of experience. So you're playing against people who have been doing this for years, and you can't learn experience from a book. You can only get it from putting in the effort and putting in the time and learning for yourself. So that's why at the higher limits, it's really hard to break through in a short period of time, and why it just takes a lot of hard work and dedication.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm trying to work on is like changing up my game, like adjusting to other players. And I'm sure, most people have this thing that they're working on, their issue. But I'm generally a pretty tight player, and so it goes against like my grain to actually be, like loose aggressive. But sometimes when the table is tight, I try, but like the old habits come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, like, like how do you actually like force yourself to change a little bit? Like say today I'm just gonna play, I'm just gonna try and like check raise bluff a little bit, or I mean, like, how do you actually like change your game?
Well, the first thing that's easy enough to do is just say, okay, these are my normal opening ranges from each position, and today I'm gonna add these other hands to my range so that I'm playing more hands. And I'm actually gonna do a video that's gonna have tight aggressive starting ranges and loose aggressive starting ranges, so you can know like what's the reasonable limit of hands you can add before you go too far and it's not going to be profitable whatsoever. So that's the first one you can do. You can also say I'm going to 3-bet more today, because there are, you can work with a tight 3-betting range. You can work with a really loose 3-betting range. You can work with a 3-bet range that's somewhere in the middle, and they can all be profitable. So you just say, okay, whereas normally I only 3-bet for value, today I'm going to add in some 3-bet bluffs, but it's just about knowing which hands are the correct ones to add in. And then lastly, actually, if you start playing more hands, you're going to be put into more spots post-flop where you're forced to try other aggressive lines. And it all just starts from adding in more hands, whether it's opening hands or hands you're going to 3-bet with, or defending to more 3-bets with a wider range of hands, or flat calling with more hands that you would normally fold with. And then you get into these weird spots where you're going to have to make more aggressive plays. Like if you're flatting raises with weak suited connectors.
That was a mistake.
What's the mistake?
Table 3. I clicked the wrong button, but I'll call now.
Okay. Damn.
Sweet.
Fucking got him. I think this one you can raise for value. I think it's pretty unlikely he's going to have diamonds as well here. Make it a little bigger than that, like 15. Yeah, we got him. We got that value. And yeah, the thing is, like, if you're getting in there with more hands pre-flop, you're just going to be forced to take some more aggressive actions because you're not going to flop great equity as often. So you're going to have to, start playing your gut shots more aggressively, and you're going to be flopping more gut shots when you're playing those crappier hands. Um, and it's just step by step. You just slowly widen your ranges in various spots, and then learn what the correct plays are post flop. And a lot of people, once they get comfortable playing loose, they just stick with it because they're like, I want to see more hands. I want to be in more profitable situations, even if it's a small bit of EV that I'm getting from this spot. It's still a positive expectation. Whereas if you just play the tight solid style, your EV spots are going to be much larger, but they're going to be much more infrequent.
So has your style of play changed? Like, I think you've always been like a tight player, right? But have you actually like um, experimented or just become like really crazy and loose sometimes in certain games?
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually usually when I try to loosen up, it doesn't go too well. But I think that's just because I haven't had the best coach for that stuff. But every once in a while I try, and I know that if I want to get back to the bigger games, I'm going to have to get comfortable playing a more loose, aggressive style. But I've honestly been lazy about that, which is why I'm still playing at the limits that I play at. Because it's hard to learn new habits and forget the old ones. Like you said, it's always easy to drift back into your natural way of playing, even if you know that there is a more profitable one. Because if something works, it's hard to justify trying to change it, right?
Like just I'm just thinking of when I'm actually playing the live games and just seeing how some players are so loose.
Mm-hmm.
So, they'll call with like Jack Deuce suited, basically any suited cards, right? And they'll run up, huge stacks because other people can't let go of top pair good kicker, right? So when they do hit like a two pair with a Jack Deuce, they're able to stack a guy,
Yeah.
so or they hit their flush. So and they'll be able to get away from their hands. So seeing players like that in those kind of games, as long as they can get away from their hands, um, it kind of makes sense to play loose. But then like I just don't like calling raises with Jack Deuce suited.
Yeah. Well, what if you knew that the guy who raised the pot, whatever, let's say he makes it $20, and you're both sitting like $800 deep, and you knew that this guy only ever raises aces, kings, and queens. Then
I
would
would
you be willing to call with a jack deuce suited if you know like
maybe not
100% he's
Jack
gonna have
Deuce
enough?
suited, but like a pocket pair or like a better suited connector. I would try to stack them off.
Yeah. And those guys who play really loose, what it comes down to is they have a good understanding of how their opponents play, probably from having a lot of experience playing against them. And if you know exactly how someone plays, what types of hands they're willing to go all the way to the felt with, what types of hands they're only willing to put one bet in and you can blow them off of, then you can play a much wider range because it's no longer so much about your cards, it's about theirs. If you know in what situations you can move them off their hand, then you want to play as many pots with them as possible to get in those potential situations where you can move them off their hand and pick up the pot. And a couple of my buddies who've played live and now they're pretty loose, and I asked them, I'm like, how did you get so loose? And they're like, well, at first, I played really tight, really solid, and then once I got a good feel for how everyone plays, because they're playing with the same group of players every week, they're like, then I start to loosen up because I know how these guys are going to react to various things and in which situations I can take advantage of them. But if you're playing at a new table where you don't know anyone, then coming in with a like balls to the wall, really loose, splashy strategy is going to be rather risky. So I'd assume that most of those guys you're talking about have a lot of experience playing live games. Let's raise that guy and just isolate and play all in. It's a hand that would rather play heads up than play multi-way. So
Yeah, and he's got a small stack, so he'll probably just shove.
yeah, for 20 big blinds, we're totally fine getting ace queen in. Perfect. If he shoves, we call. We're getting 5-1. Whatever.
Nice hand.
Yeah. How many things had to go right for him to actually win that pot?
Oh, one question I had was about check raising river bluffs. I've been thinking about a lot about that lately.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if do you advise against it? Because some people, it seems like they just think it's it's kind of a donk move.
It is a bit of a kamikaze play, but it's high risk, it's high reward. I think that when determining if you want to go for check raise bluffs on the river, it depends how thin your opponent can bet. If your opponent is only capable of value betting the river with his strong made hands, then there's no sense in trying to check raise the river as a bluff, because if someone's going to bet their strong hands, they're probably not going to be wanting to fold them. But if someone's capable of value betting thin, betting top pair, weak kicker on the river for value, or maybe even betting second pair, or betting two pair on a three flush board for value, that's the spot where you can think about doing a river check raise bluff. Because there are going to be a lot of hands that he's betting the river with that he's not willing to call the raise with. But you just really have to know your opponent for that to be effective. And I think your opponent generally has to be a good hand reader for it to work. Because if they don't know what you're trying to represent, they aren't going to understand why they should be folding a lot of different hands. The other good spot to do it is when like a scare card comes on the river that you know your opponent's going to be betting with his entire range. So he's going to be having a lot of bluffs in his range. That's an okay spot to go for a check raise bluff, because he just has so many air hands that are going to be folding. And wow, you were running good.
I actually misclicked. I should have bet more or just checked it, but
yeah. Let's try check calling with the deuces and then hoping that he. Oh, we're in position. What am I talking?
I find it confusing on the site because they have like the pot above the cards, and then like the actual there's another amount below the cards. So I was getting confused of like what's the actual pot size.
Yeah. I will say, although the software needs some tweaks, I think it does have some good potential. It's a lot better looking than Cake.
Yeah, and the games seems like a lot softer.
Yeah. What's the biggest game? Like, what are the biggest limits they offer here?
It's 1530.
Okay. So I guess that's similar to Party Poker. Party Poker eliminated all games bigger than 510. It's kind of weird.
Why is that?
I think it's because they want to protect the player and make it more difficult for people to be able to like blast off their entire bankroll, especially if they win like a bad beat jackpot or something. They want to keep the money in circulation so that they can keep chopping away and getting their rake. Because if someone plays big and goes bust, that's one less player that they're going to be making money from. Whereas if they just keep the money circulating over and over and over, they see a much greater return on the money that's in play.
So they basically want to keep the money at low stakes where they can just turn the rake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a business thing. And I think Party also decided that they weren't going to be able to be the site that had the biggest games, so just specialize in something they can do rather than try to compete with someone who's more able to offer higher stakes more effectively. And pro tip from Greg Merson: check raise river blocks at small snakes no limit. Usually don't work too effectively due to people not being able to bet fold river value hands. So it's that if someone bets a hand on the river when they're betting for value, they don't understand that it might be good enough to bet and get called, but when they get raised, the hand's probably no good. So only
Yeah,
do it
I
against
would only
favorites.
even think about doing it to like a really good nitty player. You know, on this side, I can't because there's no HUD, so I probably wouldn't try it. But if I have the HUD fired up and the guy, you know, is real nitty,
Yeah,
and the board is really scary, I might try it.
yeah, and in live that's going to work well too. Like it's easier than you'd think to blow a nit off a pair of aces, as long as the pot hasn't been like 3 or 4 bet pre-flop. If it's a single raise pot and you think a nit has aces, you can take the call raise river line, and they're going to be folding pretty often. But take that advice with caution, obviously. So I think we'll do one more orbit and then wrap up. So if you got any questions before I go, you got me for a couple. But I think you think about the game well. I understand that it's a little harder to take it serious online when you're playing much bigger limits at the casino. But if you continue with this style of play, you continue to do your reading and stuff, you should definitely be able to make a lot of money at those live games and some money online as well. And I think once the legislation passes and the online poker market opens back up in the US and it's going to be easier for people to get money online, the games are going to be a lot juicier because there's going to be a lot more money floating around.
I guess one question I had, maybe last question, is about C bet sizing.
Mm-hmm.
So do you generally vary it? You know, like if you actually don't have a hand, maybe you make it half pot, and then when you do have a hand, you make it like, you know, 2/3 of a pot, or do you keep a consistent bet sizing?
Mm-hmm. C bet sizing is going to vary, but it's never when you're going to be in a situation where you vary your bet sizing. Like I was on the show yesterday, we were talking about 3 bet sizing and 4 bet sizing. And for C bet sizing, your sizing is definitely going to vary, but the deciding factor should never be your actual hand strength. It should be the board texture. So on a board where there are like no draws possible, like King 7-2 rainbow, you can get away with C betting as small as 1/3 of the pot. Once a straight draw or a flush draw gets out there, you want to go half pot. If there are two draws out there, like a straight and a flush draw, you want to go like 3/4 pot. Basically, the more outs that your opponent can have to draw out on you, whether you have a hand or not, determines how big you should bet. So if it's a really dry board, you want to be betting closer to full pot. If it's an extremely dry board, you want to be betting like 1/3 pot. The one time there's an exception to that where you can switch it up based on your actual hand strength is if you're against an opponent who is clearly not a good hand reader, is clearly just a bad player, then you're going to choose a size that has a desired effect. Like if you want him to call, you bet small. If you want him to fold, you bet big. But that's only against like really, really bad players that you can execute that strategy. Yeah, for what it's worth with these fives, I would take it to the felt.
12 or?
Yeah, 12's good. That sets us up for 3/4 pot size bet on the river. Hopefully no spade. Because I'm thinking, although he could have a flush, he could also have like aces or kings or queens with a spade. And he might have a hard time folding those. So.
Should I just shove or make it look?
Yeah, just go for it all. He's going to be getting 3-1 on his money.
Well, thanks for recommending this site. This site is pretty soft.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Everyone's like, yo, Evan, make some bids on PokerStars. And I'm like, why don't you just stop playing on PokerStars and start making money? There's a reason why I don't play there. I think that's going to be a good note to end it on, man. You did pretty well this session. I think you're up.
Yeah.
3 buy-ins?
Something like that.
All right. Good stuff, man. Well, thanks a lot for being on the broadcast, and maybe we'll get you on again in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you had some good questions, and I think the viewers appreciated those as well. So, best of luck with your poker stuff. Have a good one, bro.
Bye.
All right, and that concludes today's broadcast. I hope you guys found it entertaining and educational, as always. For those of you who haven't signed up yet, I'm just going to quickly show you guys how to get on our mailing list so that you can be on the show and get any info about upcoming promotions and stuff. Bam, right there, coaching notifications, top right corner. And starting next week on Monday, we're going to be doing a daily free roll on Betfair. So make sure that you guys get those Betfair accounts set up. Links to get that done are available on the YouTube videos. And if you need one, just send an email to evan@grips.com and I'll be happy to help you out. Passwords will be given away on the show. And free rolls will run 1 hour before the start of the show. So make sure you tune in daily so that you can get those passwords and you can get in those free rolls and start building up that bankroll with no risk. Also, if you haven't yet, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter so that you can stay in the loop with what's happening with Grips Poker Training. So that's it for me. This has been Evan for Grips.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now it's your turn. Go out there and get stacking.